Hey guys, this is Evan. This is the second part of my fish tank tutorial. So on the right, I have the Python code that I went over in my first video. We have the three classes: the fish class, the tank flash class, and the controller class here. And on the left, we have the JavaScript, which I'm going to walk through. I just wrote this a little bit ago. Um, so let's get started. So first class uh, we have here is the fish class, and you'll notice that just open up this class here. The constructor is called out as a constructor. Um, where in Python they have dunder in it as the function that's used, and also in Python they pass the self call. In JavaScript they don't. They just use a special word called this. So it's always the same word, but in Python, if you were to change this to a different uh, name, it would still work. The other thing is that I'm not using a call operator, which are these parentheses. So in JavaScript, I don't need that. What this does basically in Python is it allows you to inherit from a, a soup class. Uh, okay, so going back to JavaScript here, essentially doing the same definitions. Notice how we're using brackets too. That's also a big difference. The function I'm using here is one that it's a method I wrote into the fish class. You don't see that in Python because we're just using the random libraries functions to do the choosing, which is a nice thing that Python has. Now we come down to the new location function. Again, very similar. I kind of wrote out the arrays. I didn't have to do this. I could have done this a different way. That's a bit more concise. I'll show you an example of that when I get down to the tank class. So opening up the tank class, we see the constructor function, which is again similar to the initial, the dunder init function. Here we have our instantiation populating fish objects into the tank, and we have the same thing happening here. And this is this is object creation. So the way it's done in Python is you just call the fish class like it's use the call operator on it, and you call the fish class, and that basically creates a new fish and returns a fish object that we're then loading into a property called fish. That's a dictionary of the class. Also, something I should mention is that these definitions I have here, these are for the class. You don't really need them. Sometimes I put it when I don't need to use anything for class properties. These are basically properties that are shared across all the objects. But I just put them up here to kind of make it easier to know what are the properties of each fish. I'd probably recommend not putting that. I kind of did this when I wasn't sure exactly what class properties were, but they're they're really intended for a different kind of use than what I'm showing them here. So going back to the constructor here, now we open up the update location function, which again is similar. Here you're doing a for loop. Oh, you know what? Let me go back up here. Actually, I want to describe this. So in this for loop, we call out var f of. We say for parentheses var f of, and then this is just a fancy way of doing this. The dot 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 is called the spread operator. It spreads out the array, when you call just array like this and put 10, you're basically calling an array of 10, uh, 0 through 9 keys. And then the dot keys is what's actually then pulling the indexes of that and then using that to make the array. Then we call and create the new fish class. So here we're using we actually use new in JavaScript to assign it. But very similar, you can see it's very similar code. Not much different. Update location. So now the other thing that's different from the Python version of this is that in the for loop, when you're referencing the properties of the fish class, so what this is doing is basically going through each of the fish objects and calling this new location function on it. And to do that, what we use is this object.values. So it pulls up the method new location, and it allows us to, well, it pulls up the object and it gives us access to the method, and then we can loop through and execute that. That's also what's going on here, but in Python the call is self.fish.values. So values is because we're returning fish, which comes back as a dictionary of the properties and their values. And in JavaScript it's coming back as a, this I believe comes back as a list. Okay, now going down to the controller. Here, again, the constructor function, dunder init. We're instantiating a new tank object and attaching that to the controller object. Then the begin simulation function, also very similar. Now, one difference that I'll point out when I get to it later is that there's no wait time, there's no sleep time. I didn't set that in JavaScript, although I could have. Anyway, so the flag here in begin simulation is set up very similarly to Python. Notice how the false is lowercase, in Python it's uppercase. There's 3 equal signs in the logical comparison. The while has a parentheses that you put the comparison in, whereas in Python you don't need that, you just have the semicolon at the end. Then we call the fishSim function, which looks like this, and at this point we then execute the tank update location function, which updates all of the fish's location, and we then print out, so this is basically printing out to the console what the fish tank's object, properties are. So what the fish's sizes are, what the color is, what its XYZ location is. And that's similar to what we have here in Python. We have the update location function being run. Again, this is a waiter, makes it wait for 4 seconds in Python. I didn't do it in JavaScript, but I could have. And then the for loop that goes through the fish objects and grabs their values and then prints that to the console, or the output in Python, not the console. Okay, and then we have the prompt for quitting, which is the Q button, and it checks if the user puts that in, and it'll exit out of the while loop if that's true, and they'll say it's exiting simulation. And then at last we have the creation of the controller object, and then the execution of the begin simulation function, which is, this is line 61 is the first code that's really executing, if you could think of it that way. Everything else is just classes that are getting called and wrapped and referenced. So if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, this is similar to a composite approach where you are making classes that define objects that are getting used within other class definitions. There's other ways to structure this. I think in JavaScript there's also probably a functional way of doing it. I haven't looked into it. Maybe I'll do another video of taking a functional approach. I think that'd be pretty interesting. But anyways, hope you guys liked it. And that's it.